Hello everyone. Welcome to the session. This is Bishnu Das. Uh, I have an experience of total of around close to 10 years. I'm working as a software engineer in test in Partier India Tech Private Limited. And for today's session, we'll be looking after how page object model, using a page object model, we develop a framework, right? And and the other prerequisite for this page object model, yeah, there are various other things prerequisite, but I'll make it easy. I'll take a step by step in order to proceed with the page object model. And yeah, we'll straight away jump into some basics of the Selenium, and then we'll go ahead with the page object model so that you get some clarity regarding development of the framework. I mean, this is when you talk about page object model, right? This is not only this is not a framework. This is actually a design pattern. So there could be a many design patterns are present in the Java, right? So we are using a Java here. So we'll automate few scenarios of a dummy website, and we'll see how this page object model will help us to remove the duplicacy from our code, how this page object model framework will able to enhance or add more test into our framework, right? And yeah, I think this is when I talk about this page object model, there are uh, there are various things to be look after it. Like if I mention, if I don't use a page object model, what are the challenges we face? We see in an agile environment, there are many a times we get many requirements during the development as well, right? Agile is meant for that. I mean, whenever the requirement comes, we should be in a position to actually um, take those requirements and put it into the current working structure and implement those and deliver to the client. So looking after those things, now whenever the requirement comes, it will come with some of the changes, right? In the functionality, there will be some change in the functionality, and that some things already would have been developed. So now in order to incorporate those changes into the current scheme of a current product, there definitely the developers will change the UI of it if it is a web application. So now if they change the UI, that means that definitely there will be some locators or the web elements that gets changed. And now for an automation engineer to work on those pages, it will be very hectic if you are not following a framework, any framework. But today we are going to look after page object model and how it is going to help us to not do the mistakes which the other developer will do if they are not following the page object model, right? So I'll share my screen and we will see step by step before going into a page object model. Give me 1 second. I hope my screen is visible to you. Okay. See. Okay. I hope this PPT is visible to you, and this is where we will go step by step. And once we know some basics on the Selenium, we'll be able to develop a basic framework, and we will see how are the frameworks basically been enhanced, or how we can incorporate page object model in any of the framework, whether it is whether you are writing a code from a scratch, or if there is an already implemented framework with some different design pattern. I mean, how do we incorporate page object model there? So first we need to see, whenever we talk about, as I mentioned, one of the example where changing or updating the elements, right? Elements nothing but it is a locators in terms of a Selenium. Now when I talk about Selenium, web elements are nothing but web elements are nothing but when a web page are there, if any of the element gets changed, we have to take help of a locators concept in Selenium in order to make changes into our current script. So um, so if you see the introduction part of locators are used in the Selenium WebDriver to find elements in a DOM. Now, if anyone who doesn't know about what is DOM, it is basically it talks about the how do we develop the UI of that particular. There would be some HTML, CSS, JavaScript would be there, right? And we can see the HTML structure, how this page, entire page would be developed. So if I take an example, um, if I do right click and do inspect and go to a developer tool, you would see this particular screen or this particular page, the docs.google.com, is been developed, is having a this DOM structure. And this is a DOM structure. If you see, it would contain all the HTML tags required to develop this particular screen. So it has a head, then body, then again it has some iframes, span. So these are the HTML tags. And again, if you see, it has been implemented. This section of this particular screen has been developed using div. And again, these are the HTML tags. And if you see this ID, tab index, role, these are nothing but the attributes of this element would have these attributes. So we call this an attributes. So now in Selenium, if you want to locate any element, let's say I wanted to click, since this is also a web page, right? uh, we'll go to this screen. This will be our dummy. This will be our dummy app, which will be seeing how do we automate this particular screen or using a page object model. So if you see this screen, right, this is a URL of the page, and we have a, title, right, and this will be the actual heading, and then we have a the page title is nothing but Swag Labs. We have a many things around here, right? We have this accepted usernames has been given, the password for all users has been given, then we have a username, password, and login button. So all these things are nothing but the page elements. Now in order to interact with these page elements, we definitely would require locators in Selenium. So what are locators and how many types of locators are present in Selenium? So in order to understand that, we'll go ahead with this. We basically have a let's say you wanted to interact with the username or password. So I'd go and inspect it, and I'd see this username. You just have to click on this icon when you open this developer tool, and click on this icon, and then again click on username. So you would see this got highlighted. That means this is the HTML tag input, is the HTML tag has been implemented, is been written to implement this field, right? Similarly, if I inspect on this password, you see this again input tag has been used to implement this password field. And what are these things? Class, placeholder, type, these are the attributes of this particular section, right? Input tag. So and these are nothing but its value, right? So you want to highlight a username, or you want to enter anything on the username or password, you want to click on these items, right? So first step would be, you should be knowing that you have these locators or these elements, we call it these web elements in place, right? Then only Selenium will be able to interact. Otherwise it's not in magic that how a Selenium works, right? You have to pass a web element there and then it works. So in order to write a XPath for this particular username or password or login button, right? So we take help of writing either CSS selector, XPath, or there are, since the locators in Selenium, uh, we have ID locators, we have a class locator. We can write find this web element by using an XPath. We can write CSS selector. We can write a name as well. Okay? So there are many things, but let us try to see one example using this. How do you identify this username? So you have to come to this developer tool, and to control F, you will see this tab has been opened, input field, where you can verify write your XPath or ID. So if you see this username input, we have been given a class, then there is also an ID. So ID basically says that this field, this username will be unique. I mean, this cannot be used in any other tags. By implementing any other element, they cannot use this ID. So ID always will be unique for this page, right? So we can take help of this ID, right? And in order to check whether this ID is correctly representing this particular element or not, we will use in order, if you are using a CSS selector, we can directly write using hash and write. See, I have given the value of that particular ID, and it started highlighting that. And you also have to make sure that whenever you are doing this, it should be only one matching node, one of one. There should not be any many matching nodes. Otherwise, Selenium WebDriver will be confused. I mean, which element has to be taken. Though it will take the first one, but we should be in a position to take one matching node every time in order to interact with a single element. So this is all about the ID and how to identify. And if you want to write an XPath for this particular element, then we would use something called, there is a separate syntax to it. So again, you need to go to that element. Okay, this is the element. So we have to start with an HTML tag. So that's where input, you have to write this is HTML tag. So start, always have to start with the input, double slash input, and then we have to give square bracket. Inside that, we have to mention at the rate ID. At the rate is nothing but is reflecting an attribute of that particular element, and then we have to specify what is the value of it, and it should be in a single quote or a double quote, you can mention it, and then you put the value. See, this time as well, we see we have a one matching node, and it is identifying that particular element. Now we got this path, so we'll provide this path. This path, we call it as an X path in Selenium, right? In X path, this path will provide to Selenium, and whenever the Selenium script will run, right, similarly we will get it for a password, and similarly we'll get it for a login as well. So for this username and password, definitely this will be an input, right? User enters here. So for entering in Selenium, we have a send keys, and this is, since this is in button, we will have we might have already written an XPath or ID or class name, or using a CSS selector, and then this should be a click. So user action has to be a click in this position. So there is a click method in Selenium as well. So this is how we will identify elements in Selenium, and this was the basic before we proceed further, and this is what we will see in our next slide as well. So now um, and if you see this locating in Selenium, I mean locating elements in the Selenium WebDriver is performed by using a driver.find elements. I mean, we have to create an instance of a WebDriver, right? A Chrome driver or a Firefox driver or a Safari driver. These are the drivers which are basically meant to automate that particular specific browser. If you're automating on a Chrome browser, then we have to create an object of a Chrome driver, right? And then we have to use a find element. If you are specifying, like I mentioned, if you wanted to enter any text here in the username, then basically we have to uh, use this driver dot find element. Find element is the method, and in order to enter it, this will basically return a web element, right? So if you want to directly enter in this particular text, then we have to basically specify find element dot send keys, and then you enter the data in the form of a string there, and the Selenium will be able to interact with this particular field and enter the data into it. So the other thing is that if there are a list of data, then we have to go with the driver dot find elements. We'll go to the next slide. And as I was mentioning, the type of locators, there are 8 type of locators in Selenium. And as I mentioned, like, we have ID, name, link text, parser link text. We can identify an element by using a tag name itself, right? As I was mentioning, right here, if you see, this is a tag name. So I was mentioning these are the tag names, right? Input is a tag name. So if you do control F and you try to find out all the tag names which has an input tag, you see there are three tag names. There are three which has an input tag name. Right? So similarly, we can, and if you take this as an XPath and write, and this should not be driver dot find element. This should be driver dot find elements, right? Because this contain three elements. It is not one of one, and this is where we will use find elements. And similarly, if you see, we can identify a element by using a class name, XPath, and CSS selector. XPath I just have written, and CSS selectors also we can select. CSS selector is nothing but we can directly identify an element without writing complex structure. CSS is straightforward, where if you want to identify a class attribute of an element, then we have to specify dot operator and proceed with the class name of it, right? For an id we have to write hash, and then uh, the id of it, the value of it, right? Id value of it. um, so this was kind of a basic to this particular um, this was kind of a basic to Selenium. And before proceeding with the page object model, let us see the actual what is page object model. So as I was speaking about the page object model, right? So in basically, when if you're not using a page object model, so all of the classes, right, all of the class um, attributes or the class methods, so you have to write in the single class. And if you, even if you are using a test ng, you will write a multiple test methods having multiple validation or action methods in the single class, and all the locators of that particular pages. Let's say I want to automate, right, login page. So you create a test, you mention all these login objects, username, password, login, right? All these things in the single page. Even after login, after successful login of this application, we have a multiple pages. If you see here, I log in with the success credentials. I use it there. I have a products page, right? So in this product page, you see multiple elements are there, right? Multiple products are there. These products are nothing but an element. Then again, there is a cart page. If you want to click on this particular page, we have a product detail page. So there are multiple pages. So that's where page object model comes into picture. So if you want you if your application contain multiple pages, then definitely page object model will be one among the choice where you can implement if you create a framework using a page object model. We'll see the demo and the later after this ppt. Just for a theoretical purpose, I'll go through the slides, okay? And in the slides we will have some dummy code, okay? And we'll see the actual implementation of how do we implement the page object model using Java, Selenium, and also TestNG. We will see another variation to it, where I will show you how we can implement page object model using Cucumber as well. I mean, we'll have a Cucumber as well integrated with that particular framework. We'll see the other variation. Instead of Cucumber, can we have a TestNG variation, right? Then again, Cucumber with the TestNG, and again we can have a variation of a framework with the Cucumber, or Cucumber with a JUnit, right? So all this demo will have this after the session, after this particular PPT theory part gets over. We'll see this how does we actually implement. So if I talk about the advantages of page order, as I was mentioning, right? Whenever we create a framework, it should support whatever the upcoming changes. I mean a framework should be capable to get all the new changes incorporated in the framework in the later stage of a time, right? As I was mentioning, if you are working in an agile environment, that will be quite frequent that you might have to deal with the changes. You have to integrate the changes within your framework, right? And that will be very hectic if you're right, if your code is not optimized, if you're not following the clean code practice. So these things does matter when your product is huge or it is growing, right? It will be very challenging if you're not following any good design pattern, and page object model is one among them, which is being followed across in this IT industry for a QA engineer, QA automation engineer, right? So as I was mentioning, I mean, if you see, there are a few theory part related to the page object model. So page object model is a design pattern used in Selenium. So it is not a framework, right? It is a design pattern in Selenium, which is basically we use in Selenium, right? A popular automation testing tool to create a structured and maintainable way of organizing and interacting with the web elements in a web application. So in simple term, it helps in representing a web page as objects in your code, making the automation script more readable, usable, reusable, and also easy to maintain, because these are very important. I mean, when if you are not following these things, definitely when this your product will um, have a multiple features added in future, then it will be very difficult for an automation engineer or the QA engineer or an SDET who is working in that particular organization with that particular product, with that project. Then incorporating those changes will be very difficult, because it will look like your test cases are getting bulky and you are not following a good approach. Many things, many issues will come into picture. One among them would be you will not be able to update, you have to update multiple places, right? And there could be a duplicate code issues as well in your framework. You have to write the same code multiple times. Then web elements, right? You are using the web elements you have written at one place, then again you have to write a separate pages as well. So these issues will come into picture. We'll see how do we overcome those things, and we'll see in the demo as well how do we implement this page object model. And even if you want to interact with that particular, or if you want to interact with the web page, is having many web pages, like we mentioned, e-commerce website of like Amazon or Flipkart, they have a many pages, right? So how do we automate those applications which has a huge number of pages, right? So obviously page object model will be one of the choice. You can start developing a framework from scratch. So if you see, I have taken some slide from this website as well. So we'll understand how does a page object model looks from a theoretical point of view. So the first question should be why page object model. So if you see, automating without page object model, it is mentioned that we'll put all the scripts into a single class, as I was mentioning, right? It could be like we have created a login for this login page. We have this login page, and sorry, we'll log out to the application. So you see we have the login page in screen. So um, if you see, the code has been written as we are creating one main method, and in that particular main method we're creating an object of a web driver, right? I mean, creating an object of a Chrome driver and assigning to a web driver. So this is one of the not a good approach, because if you're creating something within the class itself, right, that will lead to code duplication, and also problems like a performance issue into everything. It will be readability issues will be there, because everything is placed on the same class, right? See, in the same login class, I've written to access a website, I'll write a driver.get, like to locate any element, as I was mentioning. um, I write driver.find elements, and driver.find element by .id, because I was using an ID attribute of that particular username field, this username field. And this step would basically enter the data as a standard user here, and locate the password. And in order to locate the password field, I'm using driver.find element by .id, and this will basically identify the password field. In order to enter there, I'm using again this password dot send keys and passing the correct password. And this is all without this is all without page object model, right? And you might have observed that everything has been written here, the methods are written here, right? And you are initiating a Chrome driver in the same class, login class itself. But instead of doing that, if you see the advantage, or instead of there is a better approach, like as I was mentioning, a page object model could be one of the approach, and this is widely followed in the IT industry. And if you see the advantages of the page object model in Selenium, we have a code reusability, maintenance easy wise. So if you see code reusability, it has been written as a creating a reusable methods, right? Reusable methods within a page of within a page objects allows you to avoid duplication. As I was mentioning, duplicate code, so it will avoid those things. Then again, maintenance would be easy because let's say after some days or after some sprint of your work, there are few changes are there, or it has been, or after a few months your test cases are used. Now you want to incorporate new changes into it, right? Or you want to check how is the health of the application by using your script, whatever the test cases you have written, you want to run that, right? So there should not be any issues while running again, looking after it. So if you see here, UI structure or the functionality changes are confirmed to the respective page objects. Enhanced readability, because every page will have its uh, separation. I mean, we talk about the separation of concern, right? Let's say we write the login, so only login related details should be there. So based on the our actual web application, like here if you mention this, there are multiple screens, like we have a login screen, right? Again, there was a dashboard screen, we have a product screen, and then we have a might be a search, right? So there are multiple pages, so each page will contain a Java class. We'll create a Java class in our code, like a login page, dashboard page, we have a product page. So these pages will create, and each page will have its own corresponding elements, and its corresponding action methods will be there. Let's say I want to enter the data in this login page. So the login enter data method would be present in the login page itself. It should not be there in the dashboard. Again, for a dashboard related or the product related, it should be having a product related elements in that particular page, right? And similarly for a product details page, only the product details would contain only that particular page in that particular page. So we are making things very clear. If the in the later phase of a time, if there is a requirement to change anything on the login screen, or they might have changed something on the product page, then we will not go to, or will not be able, it will not be delaying us, right? We know that there is a change in the dashboard page, we'll go to the dashboard in our automation framework, and we'll update accordingly. If there are some elements change, we'll go and update that, right? This will be one of the huge benefit which will actually help us in the longer. Now there are various other things, improve the collaborations. Now we have a consistent locators, right? Since we are maintaining the locators within the pages, we have this scalability will not, there will not be any scalability issue, because as I mentioned, we are keep on adding the pages. So in future, if there is a new page has been developed by a developer, and we also want to automate and incorporate those changes also in our framework, then there will not be an issue, because we just have to create a new page, create its corresponding elements in order to identify the elements in the web page, and then methods, and then add that particular page to our framework. That's it, and the rest all things will remain the same. You just have to write that your test, the test page will again be a separate page, and you have to write a test calling those methods which you have already written in the new page which you have created. And yes, definitely there will be a support for a parallel execution when you do a POM, page object model framework, right? And we also do have an enhanced debugging, cross browser compatibility, right? Adaptability to change, as I was mentioning, right? So these are the advantages of the page object model, and we'll go to the next slide. Now we'll see how does it is actually implemented. Till now, any doubts or anything which is not clear to you, you could put down your comments here. I can just take it right away. I'll take 30 seconds or 10 seconds to see if there are any comments or questions regarding this page object model so far. Okay, so we'll move forward and we'll see how do we implement a page object model in Selenium, using Selenium. So we would see we have a login class. Since I was mentioning, right, every page of an actual web page, an actual web application will create a separate page. So that's where I've created a login page Java class where we have kept the locators. As I was mentioning, the locators related to a login page. Then we have a corresponding methods, right? So this is a method to set username. This is again the method to set password. We have a method to click, right? And these are the three methods actually required in order to enter the credentials and hit the login buttons, right? You enter username, enter password, and click on this. So these are two for entering, and this is for click. And this is where we have written three methods here: set username, we have a set password, and we also have a click. So now if you see, we also do have, whenever you create a web page, we have to make sure that we also create a constructor of that particular page. If you're not familiar with constructor, I mean, you have to basically go and revise that. Constructor is basically whenever this page, login page will be created, right? Created in the sense whenever we will be calling object of this particular login page will be created, then we basically have to get this instance data member, which is nothing but a web driver, and we have to initialize this when you create an object of this login page, driver this dot driver, and pass the driver to it. So that same driver instance will be used by this particular login page as well, right? We will see how actually it does in the coding. So we'll see the demo. So this was about the login page. If I go to the next page, so as I was mentioning, there was a home page as well when you log in it. So we see again, since this is a page, so three things again we have to keep in mind: that we have to create a constructor of that particular page. We have to keep the locators of that particular page, and also we have to keep the corresponding action methods. So if you see, I log into the particular application. And once I log in, I see this is a home page of this particular application, and there are multiple products to it. So I have kept it simpler, and you see there are various. Let's say I want to do verify the logo, or get the text from the logo. So I have written this method to get text from logo. And in order to get text from logo, definitely we require a web element, right? And those element or the locators, I have kept it here, right? And as I was mentioning, three things you have to keep in mind always whenever you create a pages. We have to create the locators of that particular page. We have to create a constructor, right? And also you have to create action methods. And this was about the home page. We'll go to the next slide. And now this is the test page. So if you see, this all login page, home page, and also the test page, these are the separate classes. We are not clubbing everything into single class, right? So whenever there would be a change, we go to a particular page and then do the corresponding changes there, and everything else will work as it is. So now we have written the methods of a login and their home page, and we see there are we have to write a test cases as well, right? Otherwise it will not be just we have the methods. I mean, if somebody would be calling those methods, then it will be like an automation, right? You are doing an automating a web application. So this code snippet, it talks about we are using, I mean, this it shows that we are using a test ng testing framework tool in order to write the test. So if you see, I have used a before test, and this is the actual test. Okay, and this before test executes only once. It is based on the XML file. If you have a one test present there, it will execute once. And this is where, if you see, we have before test. In the before test, we are just we are just creating, right, a Chrome driver here, and then assigning the driver reference variable to this web driver interface. We have created this login page reference variables, also home page reference variables, and these are nothing but we are creating an object. As I was mentioning, we have a login page and there was a constructor present, right? And that constructor would require a driver, and the driver object are nothing but this driver is nothing but it is a chrome driver which we are creating in this particular before step. And if you see, this driver has been now assigned to this login page, and it goes to that particular login page which you have already seen, and there it creates an object. And after creating an object, and we call this particular the methods, corresponding methods of that particular page. And if you see, by using this login page variable, I'm calling login to swag labs, and there was a method. And then once it logs in, it will go to the home page of the screen, and then I also create an home page object, and we'll see we wanted to fetch some data from a home page as well, and I'm fetching the logo text and I'm printing in the console, right? So this was a theoretical part, and we are going to see how actually we are implementing the page object model. I'll So the next is we are going to see the demo part. I'll share my IntelliJ ID and we'll see. I hope this is clear to you. And I think before implementing page object model, it should be a little bit uh, basics on Selenium should be clear. And not only Selenium, you should also know TestNG as well. Otherwise, it will be very difficult in order to incorporate or start writing the scripts. Right? I'll share my. I've already shared. Okay, I'll share the code. I hope my screen is visible to you. So the first thing, as I was mentioning, right, whenever we create a framework, right, whenever we create a framework, we have to create multiple folders, files, and what are things will be needed. As we have already seen in the PPT, right, as I was mentioning, whenever we create a framework, we have to keep in mind that if you are creating a page object model, definitely your framework should separate pages with the test class. Test class should be a separate page, okay, and your pages which has the actual web elements of that particular actual web application will have a separate page, okay. And these two communicate with each other, right? And how does it communicate? What is the workflow? What will be the start point, right? These things these things are there. I mean, whenever you trigger a test, so whenever I trigger a test, basically the workflow would be like, we see we have created, like I have created here uh, a Maven project which is having a Selenium dependency. You see, we have a TestNG dependency as well, right? We have a Selenium Java dependency, and then we do have an extend report dependency here. So I have added a Maven Spherefire plugin as well. So how does it work? Whenever you trigger your test, so you're ultimately you have to call those web elements, because those web elements are nothing but interacting with the actual web application, right? So how does it work? The workflow will be from your testng.xml file. If you see this testng.xml file, so this pom, right, whenever you create a Maven project, pom.xml will be there. So pom.xml is nothing but it is a master file for this entire project, which will have all the informations related to your project. So if you see in this pom.xml, we have kept all the dependencies required to automate that particular application, right? The Swag Labs. So this project, or this particular Maven project, is without POM. So we will see what is the difference when you create a POM, right? So I have another framework which will have um, which will be basically have implementation of the page object model. So this is about without POM. And if I expand the src folder, you see there are two, main and test. And in the main, I don't have anything written. So in the test folder, I see I have a login test, right? And this is the code. So You see, as I was mentioning, there could be a multiple pages in the pom.xml, but if you are not using a pom.xml, so you could have written the test in similar fashion, right? Where you have kept one page. We have seen in the ppt as well, where it was having a login test which was incorporating all the changes, all the locators, right? All the methods have been written in that particular single page. That is not a pom that is not a page object model. So if you see here, the similar case is here. So I have created a class login test, right? And this web driver reference variable is there, kept it as a private. And if you see, there is a before class. This before test and before after test as nothing but I just kept for printing. And these are basically one time activity which will be done if you are having a one test um, xml tag. I'll show you how does it look. So if you see here, testng.xml file, so this is where I was talking about. Testng.xml file will communicate with the with your test class, and this test class will again go to your pages, right? So this is without pom.xml. So without pom.xml, I mean without page object model. And we will see that this test I was talking about. So if you have this um, suit, in the entire suit you have only one test tag, that means your before test will execute only once. So this is some theory behind this before test. But before class is nothing but it will execute once throughout this login test. And here what I have done, if you see here, I have created an object of a Chrome driver, as I was mentioning in the PPT as well. And this is for maximizing. And if you see, we have a test. So these at the rate test are nothing but these are the actual tests which I have written. So URL has been also provided here. Now you are provided implicit wait. So for login credentials, we are writing in the same test class and the same test method as well. So as I was mentioning, driver.find element by.name. So this name, right, by.name login button. So all these things here, um, you see here, in order to pass the data, I'm using the send keys, and then again in order to click on the button, I'm using dot click. Right. So everything has been placed in a single test, right? Single test in order to complete this login to application functionality, or check the login to application functionality. And now again I'm getting the title. Once it is clicked on sign in button, it will be logged into home page, right, or dashboard page. So there I need to get the title of it. I'm getting the title of it. And then I'm using a testng assert, right? I'm using an assert equals, and I'm comparing the expected and the actual test title, I mean the page title. And that will also print in our console. And this is just a dummy test which I have created. This can contain a verifier dashboard items, the logic inside this test, right? Again, another test, this will contain a verify product logic inside this test. And this after class, similar to the before class, as I was mentioning, after class will contain a set of instructions which will be after the class. I mean, whenever this class gets executed, or class all the test gets executed, and after at the end this after class gets executed. So the sequence is like from here. If you want to know the sequence, so it executes like before test, and then it executes before class, right? And after before class it will execute test, and then it executes similarly for this test as well. So I'm talking about single test now, and after class, and then after class it executes your after test. So the similar things will be executed for each and every test present. But at the rate before and after test will execute only once if you are having only one tag, test tag, in the XML file. So we'll see how does it work, and I'll execute this particular script. So if you see, this configuration I have already done, where I have mentioned .xml file to be triggered. We can do it in this way as well, or we can directly click on this to run or execute this particular piece of a code, right? I'll do it from here as well. So testng.xml, I'll do a right click, and you see this run testng.xml, and I click on run. Execution started, the browser got launched, it has logged in. It was way fast. You see it has gone 2 times login. Yeah, and that's it. And there were a couple of tests only, and you see we'll see the report as well here. So just 9. So this got executed, right? So if you see, there are multiple tests, right? This dashboard test and the login test, and if you expand it, you see verify dashboard test one, and under the login test we had three tests: login to application, verify dashboard, and product, verify products. So the similar test is present in the login, right? So if you verify login to the application, and we have verify dashboard, okay, we have a verify products. And since we are using a testng, right, so we can also see the report which generates a default report which generates by testng. We'll go to the target folder. Will We need to execute through Maven. So we have executed directly the testng.xml file, right? Let us execute through a Maven command. So in the console report also, if you see, there were total 8. See, this test one is for total 4 tests. If you see here, this is 1, and this is 3 plus 1 4, and again for test 2, this is 1, and this is 3. So total 4 plus 4, 8 tests are there. So it says all tests, so total tests run 8, passed is 8. So all of them has been passed. There is no failure at all. And now we will see how do we execute through Maven. Right? So many a times when you work in a project, right, and you will see your framework is integrated through a CI/CD pipeline, and you need to provide a command in order to execute this particular test. You do not have a for local execution. Again, you can trigger it, but many a times you will not have that trigger button, right, through locally as well. Locally, even if locally execution you required a local execution, you have to give a command. If you are using a Maven, definitely a Maven command would be required. So here in this case, we'll use a Maven command, mvn clean and test, and we'll hit the enter button. So here in this case also, it will launch the browser. It will execute all the 8 tests. Again, it will launch the browser and it execute the second set. It executed, yeah, it launched, it executed, and it completed. So here for a Maven, you see there is also a similar set of result where the test run is equals to 8, failure is 0, error is 0, script is 0. So that means all it is all in green. It has passed. Yeah, see, and the test run 2, total number of test is 4, and you see test run 1, total number of test is 4. And this test run 1 and 2 are coming from testng.xml. If you see here in the testng.xml, I have already provided the name. So this is the name, test run 1, and we have a test run 2 for this. Since I have kept 2 tests, right, so that's the reason it is executing 2 times. Otherwise it would have been executed only once, and in one we have only 4 tests, right? This is one of the test, this one class dashboard test, which has a verified dashboard test. Okay, and then again login test, as I was mentioning, login test was containing, if you see, 3 tests, right? So 1 2 3. So here in total 4, and here in total 4 plus 4, 8 tests, and 8 of them has passed. Right. Now I was showing you what is a default report, right, generated by a testng. And in order to see that, you have to, it will generate once you trigger through a Maven build, and if you have configured Maven ShareFire plugin, uh, you would see that this configuration I have already done, where you have to put this plugin, right? You have to insert this plugin, this set of a code, where I have mentioned the Maven ShareFire plugin version to it, and this is the XML file. This is the path of that particular XML. Since this XML file is my on the root folder, if you see this hierarchy, it is on the root folder. So I have mentioned this as well. Now, if I expand this target folder, you will see this ShareFire report. If you have not have this plugin, then this report is not generated. So I'll expand it. There is one emailable report.html. This is just a basic and just a basic reporting. So the UI would not look good, but definitely it will give some a view to some UI view to your report. So you go to browser and then open it. You see there were total of four tests, right? So and total of four tests for one, and total eight tests, 4 plus 4 8, and here it is a four test, and here again it is a four test. Uh, and these were the for test run one. These are the complete test, and test run two. These are the tests. This is nothing but method names. These are the method names getting printed, which you have written. So this is all about test ng without using POM. So if you see, this complete structure is not following the POM, right? We have kept everything on the single place. There is no page object, page classes, right? Now I will show you how beautiful the framework looks like when you have implemented the page object model, right? So here, so this is one of the framework which I have created again. If you see here, this is also following the same structure, but if you see, let us go to the pom.xml. If you see the dependencies as well, the dependencies are the similar thing. In this framework I have integrated Cucumber as well. So Cucumber with testng, and this is the version. I have a Cucumber Java dependency as well. I have a testng, right? I have a Selenium Java dependency, okay, and extend report. So in this particular framework, I have integrated extend reporting. So we'll have a good UI after good UI report, HTML good UI report, which will actually have a bar representation as well, where you can see the pass percentage, failure percentage, what are the test cases, right? What are the actual test has been written. So and the other things, the other similar things. I mean, Maven compiler is there, and I do also have a Maven file plugin here in this project as well. So it will also try to hit the same URL just to make sure that everything is on the same. I'm following the same application in order to test it. But when I expand this src folder, right? You see there are two main and test. Now I go to a main. Under main, I see base page. I have created a base page which has a base class. Now I created a pages, as this is the one which I was talking about, right? I was having a login page for a UI for that application, right? Swag Labs. So if I open the login page, so you see here we have a WebDriver reference, right? And then we have a constructor. This is nothing but a constructor, right? And you see these are the locators which I was mentioning. Each page will contain the locators. Now we username, password, and the login button, and the corresponding action method. And this is the action method. This action method is nothing but this action method will input all the username, password, right? And and if you see in the without using a pom.xml, and there also we were hard coding multiple things, right? So here I'm not hard coding. You cannot see this data is coming from somewhere else. I'll show you how does it work and from where it is coming. And this, once the login, right, once user has logged in, so definitely he'll be, or he or she will be into the application if it is the login credentials are correct, right? So in that case, definitely I have to check that whether the user is on the dashboard page or not. So that's the reason, whenever this functionality ends here, whenever the user clicks this line of a code gets executed, right? So user will be into the dashboard page, and that's where I'm returning the dashboard page, and that's where my dashboard page is also containing that. Since dashboard is also one of the page in a web application, right? In that particular web application, so I do have a constructor for this page, as I was mentioning, three things like constructor, then we have a page locators, right? And we should have action methods as well. So similar things has been implemented here as well. Now, since this base class is one other thing, right? So this base class is nothing but it will help us to what I would say, since I was in without using a pom.xml, right? We were creating a Chrome driver object in the same class, right? So we will not do that. I mean, in order to get the Chrome driver object, we will call from something else, somewhere we have got, and that place is nothing but a base class, because that is a base class. Before launching a web driver, before launching our Chrome driver, Chrome browser, right? We cannot test the application, right? So all these things should happen at the earlier stage, when before triggering our script, right? So that's the reason I have kept it in the base class, and this is also a separate class. If you see this under the base, under the pages, I have kept a dashboard page and the login page. So in the base class, there are two things which I'm doing. Basically, if you see, this base class will have a init driver, which this init driver basically will not create a browser, it basically create a browser object. That means it will launch a browser based on the browser input which we give. Let's say I give a browser as a Chrome, so it will launch a Chrome browser. So how does it work? So it accepts one parameter, that is nothing but a property from the property file, and that property file object, nothing but this is a user input data. This will be getting from one of the property file. If you see, if you expand this test, and under test we have resources, we have a config folder, and then there we have a browser. So under this we have a browser key, and its value is Chrome, and the URL we also have segregated. We have not hard coded in the code. So our code was in the base class. Whenever this init driver will be called, it will require a property object as well, right? So ultimately this is nothing to this will return our driver. So whenever a Chrome driver is or Chrome browser is launched, that means nothing but this driver object has to be returned, right? This driver reference, and that's where I'm returning this driver. So to load the property file, again we have in Java. In Java we have to create a properties object, and then we can make use of a load class, I mean load method, in order to prop dot load to pass this input file stream, and where this is talking about file path, where this actual config file path is present, config dot properties file, right? And this will basically return the data present, right? This will basically return the property object. And if you see here, see prop dot get property, and I'm calling this browser. So this is where this name has to be the same as in here, the browser name which we have mentioned. So based on this, it will traverse this if else condition, and whichever the condition matches, whether it is a Chrome, Firefox, or Safari, it launches its respective browser. I'll go to the next part of it, where I have written the test. So if you see here, we have a base test, we have a dashboard test. This base test is nothing but it is a test which is present, which can be extended to all other tests. So this has to be present, and apart from this, these all are related to particular pages. Since we have created a login page, so we have a login test, we have a dashboard page, so it's respective test cases, right? So where do we write? We write here login page. What are the respective what are the test cases related to the login page? We have to write under the login test class. So if I open this login test class, see, we are using a Java inheritance concept, where this base test is been extended, right, for this login test. So why it has been done? Because this base test is the one which has initiated, or which has this created an object of or we have called, because somewhere, right, somewhere we need to call the a driver. So how does where actually the driver object is coming from? It was coming from our base class, right? So now we also have to create object of a base class, and using the base class we have to load the properties file, because when you load the properties file, we get a property object, right? And why do we require a property object? Because we want to pass the browser also, right? So in order to call this init driver, we are using this prop reference variable, which will nothing but it will contain the browser browser name in it. And if you see, if I go to the init driver, again this is the same thing which I have mentioned, right? Init driver will accept the parameter as a prop. And I'll go back to the login test. Here I was mentioning, And here there are two things, before class and after class two methods are present. So this will basically, since we have a multiple classes, right, login page and then dashboard page, right, and there could be another pages if you want to include. This can go as number of a page, as number of classes as we have the number of pages in the actual application swag lab, right. Similarly here, this is related to the test, and if there are pages, more pages, we also have to create pages here under the pages. And after we do this setup, and then we also do have to write this after class, right. Then we are good to go. We have to basically go to the login test. So here also see, now the question is, this particular framework is using testng, right. So we are using a testng here in this particular framework in order to implement page object model. So you see, we also have to execute. How does we in terms of an execution, again there are two ways. When you're using an id, you may or may not have this um, run icon. So if you click on this run button, it will execute it. Otherwise you can go to the testng.xml file and then right click on it and run, right. There are multiple ways. So we'll go and follow this approach, and we'll execute this particular test, this particular file. So as I mentioned, testng file internally calls the test class and test class, right, and there is a flow to it. So ultimately there would be a page classes will be called. You see, it was very fast, and it already completed it. So you, if you see here, this is, there were only one test, right, under the dashboard test, and there was only one test which was having under the login test. So it is printing the swag labs. This is nothing but, this is the title. After the login we get a title to it, and this is printing this title, swag lab. And similar to this is one of the message which has been here. If you see, this is the message from login test. So this is this also doesn't have the reporting, I think. Here we do have again the test ng, but I wanted to show how a pom page object model, right, can be implemented using a test ng. Now if you wanted to see the report, again you wanted to execute through your go to a terminal, and then again go have to write a maven mv and clean test, enter it. So this will build your project, and then we will trigger the test and trigger all the test. And it has triggered all the test. It has given us the report, the build is success, the test run is 2, there is no failure. And you see there are total test run is equals to 2, and there were two tests present. And if you want to see the report again, I go to the target folder, it will generate under the maven surefire report. And in the surefire report we have a emailable reports.html file which you can open through your browser. And you see there are two tests. Now I also have implemented, so this was also an example of a pom.xml. This is an example of a pom.xml, a framework, complete framework, where we can integrate multiple things. And now we are not hard coding anything. We have a browser, since it has implemented, I have passed a Chrome, so it has opened a Chrome browser, right. I can do it using Firefox as well. I just have to do type Firefox. Okay, I just have to type Firefox, and there is no change in the code. It will start executing in the Firefox browser. And I keep do a testng.xml and then do a run. Okay, it has executed, I think. Let me run again. So I'll trigger it again. I have brought the browser to this screen, and then Let me just trigger it again. I go to the terminal. Now you see the browser is equals to Firefox. I'll do maven clean test. Okay, so it has actually run it. So if you see the build success, and there are two test run, it has executed it. Now I will show you how I have implemented the palm.xml using a Cucumber. So there is one more framework which I have. There is one more structure to a new structure to it, which will incorporate the changes of the Cucumber as well, and we will see how actually it works with the help of a Cucumber by using a palm.xml in Selenium. So I'll open this now. So here, the framework, the project structure is the same as I was mentioning, but instead of a testng, I have used a Cucumber. So if you see, we have a Java under main. We have a pages as testng framework was also having a pages. So we do also have a pages here. Similar sort of methods are there, verifying the title, do a login, and we have a locators, right? And since it is a Cucumber, I have also integrated hooks in this in the testng we were using, right, before class and after class, before test and after test. So here in Cucumber we have a after method and before method, and we have a certain code written to it, like the similar code which was there in the before class and after class. We have a runner, and this is the main file, which will actually have the configuration, the project configuration related things. If you want to include execute the particular framework using tags, right, or you wanted to incorporate multiple plugins into this particular framework, and then these are the things which can be mentioned under the Cucumber options, and this is how we can mention it. So if you see under the plugin, I have given extend report. It will generate a report not only on the testng, it will generate a report and the extend report by using a plugin, an extend report plugin, and it will have a beautiful UI report. Then it show you the feature file, right? So this is in the earlier project I showed you palm.xml using a testng. So here here actually it is a page object model implemented using a Cucumber, not testng. So we were writing scenarios using testng, right? So here it is a plain English text language. So if you see, this is a feature file, so we call it, this is a feature file, and this I will be talking, I'll be basically talking more about these things in my sessions, in the upcoming sessions. If you really like this, do contact GFC and enroll to my upcoming batch in GFG, right, where I will be talking about more things. A Cucumber, we will be going further, more deep dive into the mobile automation as well. Palm will also be there, and again, I'll start from scratch. So not be it will be a completely 2.5 months with GFG. The entire course has been divided in such a way that from a beginner to an advanced level. See, these all things are there, and these all things has been discussed from in scratch. And if you see, this is a plain English text language. This is also a scenario, and in testng we used to write at the red test, right? So here we write a test using a scenario keyword, right? Using a scenario keyword, we can tag it by using any name. This, how do you call this in a Cucumber options, right, during an execution, right? If you have a multiple test data, how do you parameterize your test? In Cucumber we use follow this examples keyword. So these are nothing but test admin 123. These are nothing but username, password, again username, password. So this scenario will execute with first this data, admin username. Again this scenario will run with this data. Okay, this is how we parameterize. So each step, if you see, each step will have a step def. So when user inputs a valid username and password, I see we have a step def, and this step def is nothing but it will represent for each page, each test, each feature file. Since it is a login dot feature, then we should have a login step def. So here under step def we have this. So you go to login page, then user sees error, user see error message. So you do a control click here, you navigate to this particular screen where again behind this particular step what is the actual implementation. So this is a plain English text language, right, by using a given when then keyword. So what is the actual implementation behind this step, and that has been written using that has been written in step def. So we write in the step def, and step def will internally call the pages. Where which pages? These pages which we are talking about in the pom, right? A page object model. So we click on it, and if you see this page, this is nothing but a login page to Java. This is a page which we have created under pages. So this is how the segregation has been done. And again, if you see, we also have a property file, and this property file is mandatory in order to generate a report. And that report is nothing but we have used an extent report, and we have specified that please generate a report under the target folder extent report, and you have to name that particular report as extent report.html. And there are so from here let us execute this and see how does the report looks. It will also execute on the same application, swag labs, but this time with cucumber. There is no test, and we only have this particular scenarios. We can have a multiple for login, for dashboard, again for a product page. You can keep on creating these feature files and implement or create the scenarios. And after the scenarios we should also have the steps corresponding the steps under this step definition. So I'll just execute this particular feature file. So in order to execute it, we basically have to execute the test runner, right? So we have a test runner in this place, and we see this test runner is already mapped to a run configuration, and I click on this run icon. See, the browser has been launched. You're seeing the multiple browser is getting launched. It's doing something, and you see this side of it has passed all the 3 tests. Okay, and if you go below, we will see this total test run is equals to 3, and there's 3 pass, all of them has passed. And you go to the login feature file, we have a total 3 tests. As I was mentioning, this is a 1 test, this is a second test, and this is a third test. So this is one scenario outline considered as a test case, right? So under that it will decide it will have a multiple test cases to it. So this is one of the tests. So this entire scenario has run with first time this one, again the same scenario has run with this data, and then 2 time it has executed, and then one this one. So total 3 tests, and 3 of them has passed. And in order to see the report, right, you basically have to go to a target folder, and if you see here again there will be a extent report, as I was mentioning, extent report. And in this extent report we have extent report.html. So we go to open with the browser, and we go to Chrome, and we see the test. So here, so there was a one feature file, it has executed it is showing the complete 512 just executed, right? One feature file, one, and there is no failure, right? There was one tagged, it is passed since we are not calling, but it is showing there is a one tag in the feature file. We would also see how does it looks like. So we go to here, and you see this is user can log in with invalid username and password, and this is what we have mentioned as a scenario name. Scenario, user can log in with invalid username and password, and the second scenario was user can log in with sample check. So I go to this particular thing. See, these two are basically the scenario names. When you click it, it will also show you the number of a test related to C. So see here, these are the 2 tests got executed, and what are the data has been taken, those are also mentioned. When user visit the portal, when user inputs a valid admin, a valid username and password, these are the 2 things, right? This username and password. So it has picked from this first row, and this was the first time execution for this scenario outline, and this is the second execution for this scenario again. and this is the last one. And this is how we beautiful report would be appearing. When you have a multiple test, you'd also see if there are any test failures. You'll see the test failures here, and if at all there are failures, you also see the exceptions in this particular directly here. So this is I think this is all about it for a page object model. And there are since I showed you without page object model, there was a one framework without page object model. I showed you with the frame with the page object model, but using a test ng, right? And I also have showed you with a cucumber, a page object model with a cucumber. I mean, we can integrate. Again, there are many things to be integrated in these frameworks as well, like integrating with the Jenkins, right? And then we can have a multiple pages to it. And how do we execute a parallel execution? How do a parallel execution can we do it here, right? Then parameterization, right? Then grouping. How do you group number of a tester into a single? And how do you create a sanity suit? Right? So all these things are there. I think in the interest of time, this is it for from me. If you have any questions for me, please feel free to ask. I'll stop sharing my screen.